Okay, I'm kinda late to this party, but today we're taking a look at Inanimate 3, Episode 1, made by AnimationEpic. Yeah, despite being 2 episodes away from being over, they've decided to start a 3rd season because, well, from what I gathered in the video they put up the other day, they want episodes to come out more frequently? Okay. I guess it's still a better solution than the one BFB came up with, but it's still a bit odd. II3 appears to be taking the show in a different, and in my opinion much needed direction, as opposed to BFB and Teapot, which, if you told me Teapot was just another episode of BFB, I honestly wouldn't question it at all. But enough complaining about BFB, trust me, I'll get to that another day. Let's jump into the episode. I'm going to start with the cast, as it seems to be a hot topic surrounding the show so far. Thanks to that previously mentioned video, we know that the returnee cast was picked by a fan vote, kinda like BFDIA. And of the 9 that returned, it was a mixed bag. 4 were good, 3 were meh, and 2 were like, why? I feel like I shouldn't have to explain why Box coming back is P-dumb, and for OJ, I don't even need to make an argument. I too already did that for me 8 years ago.
I did win Season 1, so obviously I don't need to be in Season 2.
Now I know people are going to say, well, it's not the show's fault the cast is kind of eh. It's the fans' fault for voting them in. And while yeah, that is technically true, whose fault is it that the fans voted in the first place? If the latter half of II2 is anything to go by, the show clearly doesn't think that the input from fans is very helpful. So why make it a viewer vote in the first place? Is it so they could have an excuse to put OJ in? I smell conspiracy. In terms of the new characters, well, I don't really know. Most of them have yet to do anything substantial since they didn't get nearly as much screen time as the old characters, so I hope we get more from them in future episodes because some look like they have potential. The only one I really want to talk about is Blueberry because of what they appear to symbolize in terms of the show, but I'll get to that later. Overall, the characters were decent. I didn't hate any of them, except for maybe the only 3 I've mentioned so far, but outside of some from the returnee cast, none of them are really that great. However, the biggest sin in the character department is the lack of soap. How did soap, the soap, get less votes than trophy, cheesy, baseball, and a literal box? I'm triggered. Let's move on to the writing, which was actually pretty refreshing for an anime insanity. The tone was upbeat, the pacing was good, and in general the story had a more lighthearted feel to it. It's crazy how much the writing contrasts to II2, where everything moves at a snail's pace, and the show tries to be so deep and pretentious that it just starts to get annoying. II3, on the other hand, seems to be more interested in just being an entertaining show, and putting that above everything else, as it should. The episode was enjoyable to watch because it didn't take itself so seriously, and tried to have fun. That being said, there was still an issue I had with the story. We spend the first 6 minutes of the episode or so focused on the old characters messing around before the competition starts, and then almost halfway through we finally get introduced to the new characters. This was a weird choice to me, because we already know the old cast. We've seen them in like 1 or 2 seasons by this point. Why not devote the first 6 minutes to the new cast and have the old ones show up halfway instead? That way, all the contestants can be on a more equal playing field in terms of development. Because as it stands, the new characters almost feel like afterthoughts. Another thing that's new with II3 is the confessionals, something that I've only seen done before in Town Attack. I think the confessionals can be helpful for fleshing out characters or providing more insight on interactions as long as they aren't overused, and I would say they did a pretty good job. The dialogue flowed well too, and in general I was surprised with how good the writing was, save for the thing I mentioned earlier. I thought the humor was pretty good for the most part. Not all the jokes landed, but there were still moments that made me laugh. Practically any time Bo spoke was hilarious, and as much as I didn't like how the show opened, I did like the banter between the OG cast. The backgrounds, animation, and music all gelled really well with the feel of the show, and again, I appreciate the different direction the episode took, even though tropical themes are a bit overdone, but whatever. There weren't any problems with the voice acting, and honestly, I didn't expect anything less since the show has a freaking huge budget now. So yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts on II3 thus far, but there are a couple of things I want to touch on before I end the review. First of all, the immunity vote thing they're doing now is kind of weird, and I don't really know how they're going to factor that into the episodes organically, but I do think it's an interesting way to take the fan opinions into account. Although if you ask me, I think the fans have already done enough damage by being able to pick half the cast. Secondly, let's talk about Blueberry. Remember how I said the show was trying to go in a new direction? You know, one that isn't just moping and standing around until all your problems go away? Well, consider how Blueberry was shown in the episode. Out of the entire cast, they stuck out like a sore thumb as someone who didn't really care about anything except being sad, and was about as much fun to watch as paint drying. Now, which character from II2 does that remind you of? It's a trick question. The answer is basically all of them except Lightbulb. And what happens to Blueberry at the end of the episode? They get eliminated because they did literally nothing but sit in the corner for the whole challenge. I don't know if this is intentional, it probably wasn't, but when you think about it, Blueberry is practically a stand-in for II2's boring edginess. And the underlying message of the episode is basically saying, yeah, nobody likes when all the characters in a show are just sad 24/7, which is why Blueberry was the first one to go, signifying that II3 is going to be nothing like that. Again, this is all just speculation that likely has no bearing on the show, but I do think it's interesting how Inanimate Insanity low-key roasted itself. All in all, this is a solid episode, which is something I haven't been able to say about an episode of II since 2018. I'm going to give II3 Episode 1 an 8 out of 10, and I'll see you all in approximately 1 million years. Hasta luego!